What's up, guys? We are here for the fantastic Fight Night card in Qatar, headlined by Arman Tsarukyan, hopefully, versus Dan Hooker. And Dan Hooker has also said that he heard from a massage lady that Arman Tsarukyan has an injured back. So that's not great after all of the mishap that happened at UFC 311. This is a fight where Arman needs to redeem himself, dispel all doubt and criticism about his weight cutting, and I hope he makes it. I hope he's healthy, and I hope we get a great fight. As good as it can be. I mean, we'll get to it later. I think it's not the best stylistic matchup for Dan Hooker, but I guess he has some things he can work with. Co-main event is awesome, an extension of the welterweight tournament. Belal Muhammad versus Garry could throw a wrench into the Michael Morales plans about fighting for a title, especially if Garry wins. If Belal wins, then it seems like Morales has secured his spot. Volkan Oezdemir versus Alonzo Menefield is a decent fight, I guess. Jack Hermanz's welterweight debut against Mitabek Earlby is going to be quite interesting. Waldo Cortes-Acosta is stepping up on a few days' notice to fight the GOAT, Shamil Gaziev. That is going to be an interesting one. Waldo has done wonders for Tom Aspinall's optics, and if he wins, he might be seeing Tom Aspinall pretty soon. And the much-anticipated return of Kyoji Horiguchi is on horizon. He's going to be fighting Tagir Ulanbekov as the opener to the main card. This is such an intriguing fight, dude. We're all wondering if Kyoji can eventually make his way to a title shot once again. He challenged Demetrius Johnson for the belt, and we'll see how he can do against Pantoja if he gets through the rankings here. You know, with many of them already defeated, he doesn't have to wait too long, but he needs to at least defeat Tagir, who's a pretty tough returning fight. And there's a bunch of good prospects throughout. Now, 4 fights got canceled, or at least changed. So Muhammad Naimov versus Myron Santos, completely dissipated. Jose Luis pulled out against Marek Bujlo. Sergey Spivak pulled out against Shamil Gaziev, and Felipe Lima versus Daniel Marcos also dissipated. So 2 complete cancels and 2 changes, accumulating a total of 14 fights on the card. This is going to be a great one, dude. And I would say with all the great prospects throughout, that 2 of them stand out, and they're fighting each other. So Bekzat Almakhan and Alexandre Topuria are the best prospects. The fighter of the card has to be Arman Tsarukyan. He's probably the biggest star of the card. But despite that, we are all awaiting his victory to see if he can finally become that challenge that we are all anticipating for Ilia Topuria. He is deemed to be the only one who is argued to beat Ilia. Even some other fighters share in that opinion as well. So Arman Tsarukyan has all eyes on him for this card. Now, the stake of the card. The fighter who's essentially walking the plank, where a loss could mean that they're cut, and that is Raffael Cerqueira by far. He's on a 3-fight loss streak, 2 of them by finish in the first round. He lost his last one by decision, winless in the UFC. If he loses a 4th in a row, he's most likely going to get cut. But the banger of the card, the most explosive, exciting fight, I believe is Bekzat Almakhan versus Alexandre Topuria. They are also the sleeper of the card. This is the most slept on fight by far. It's buried early in the prelims. Like, this fight might begin at like 11:30 in the morning Eastern time or something. It's such a highly technical fight with a knockout ending result being very likely for this one. Both guys hit extremely hard, especially Bekzat, and Topuria is quite capable on submitting his opponent as well. So this is going to be pure action and excitement. I cannot wait for that fight, dude. But the overall best fight on the card, I believe, is the co-main event. Belal Muhammad versus Garry is a highly technical fight with a lot of stakes on it. So again, if Garry wins, he could potentially earn himself a title shot, whereas Belal, I guess he'll stay as a top contender. I don't know. He has expressed his disinterest in fighting Islam Makhachev, so regardless, it's a high-level fight. 2 high-caliber, well-rounded fighters as a co-main event. Now, the fight is not 5 rounds, which is quite disappointing. Belal said that he asked for 5, but Garry asked for 3. Regardless, it should be a good one. And with that, let's go to the first fight of the card between Poland's Marek Bujlo versus America's Denzel Freeman. So Bujlo is undefeated, finished all of his fights on the ground in the first round, so very specific with his finishing ability there. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He has solid takedowns. He's very good on top. His ground and pound is pretty decent. He has an ability to submit opponents, which is quite rare for today's heavyweight division. But he has that in common with his opponent, Denzel Freeman, who's coming off a 2-fight win streak, also has good grappling abilities, but where the distinction is the wrestling skill. Bujlo likes to attack takedowns in the clinch. Denzel Freeman is a pretty good Greco-Roman wrestler. His strength and balance in the clinch has definitely transitioned pretty well, at least for the regional fights. And both these guys are making their debuts, so, you know, Denzel Freeman isn't fighting some, like, high-level heavyweight, which would only consist of, like, the top 5 or something, but I think his style should be able to counter Bujlo's pretty well. He's also fought to the 2nd and 3rd rounds multiple times throughout his career, but Bujlo has never been past the 2nd minute of the 1st round. So there is quite a difference in experience here, even though they have, like, a similar amount of fights. Denzel Freeman has fought for a lot longer than Bujlo has. Now, that doesn't automatically indicate that he has better cardio, but he has better experience on how to adjust and pace himself beyond the first round. So I think his Greco-Roman style in the clinch should do him very well, essentially negating Bujlo's takedowns. He lands some shots in the clinch, and potentially he could take the fight to the ground if his opponent gasses out and start landing ground and pound shots to a second round finish. So I'm going to go Denzel Freeman by a second round TKO. And then we go to the lightweight division, where the Tajik Habib, Nurullo Aliev, fights for the second time this year against Shem, who is a training partner of Paddy Pimblett. And you could definitely see the similarities in their styles, where Shem is also a submission artist, quick and versatile to get the back. He has sort of like a pot-shotting striking style. His distance management is pretty decent, and Aliev, on the other hand, is much more of a wrestler. He's quite capable on keeping top position. His takedowns are pretty strong. His striking isn't the most technical. I think Shem is more technical, but I have seen him slow down in the third round in his most recent fight against Attila Korkmaz. He's still striking pretty decently, but there was a noticeable slowing of his strikes, and I think Aliev can take advantage of that by pressing the fight the entire time, trying to gas his opponent out, take the fight to the ground, avoid the submissions, land some ground and pound shots, and eventually win the fight by another decision. Water is wet, fire burns, and Nurullo Aliev wins by a decision. And then we go to the middleweight division, Ismail Naurdiev versus Ryan Loder. This is going to be an interesting fight. Ryan Loder is coming off one loss to Almakhan, and before that defeated Robert Valentin, so he's 1-1 in the UFC. He's coming from the Ultimate Fighter. And Ismail Naurdiev is also coming off a loss to Junyoung Park, defeated Bruno Silva before that. He is also 1-1, so it's going to be an open stance fight. Ryan Loder from Southpaw has a decent right hook, I guess. Tries to take the outstep for the left straight. But to be honest, dude, I think he's mostly out of his element against Ismail Naurdiev in the striking that is. That is only if Naurdiev doesn't cheat. Naurdiev is one to follow his opponent. That was definitely shown in his last fight. Hopefully Herb Dean is on this one, dude. With everything Herb Dean has been saying about how they're going to be a lot stricter with point deductions, we want to see that put to the test here if Naurdiev starts cheating, dude. When he fought Junyoung Park, he got deducted 2 points, which is actually pretty rare. That was one of the few times the referee actually officiated well, but that has been quite lacking recently, so we shall see. I think he's the better striker of the two. I think he's much more dynamic. He has pretty good kicks he could work with due to the open stance, throwing them to the body and to the head. Ryan Loder doesn't really move his head too much, so perhaps Naurdiev can even blast through with an overhand or something like that. And although Naurdiev doesn't really apply much pressure, I think it's a huge benefit if he does for this one, as Almabayev essentially won due to his pressure and aggression. He's throwing big punches, and Ryan Loder wasn't really moving his head too well. He got dropped. Loder will fire back, but I think Naurdiev can score a knockout here, so I'm going with Ismail Naurdiev by a third round TKO. And then we go to the banger and sleeper of the card, Bekzat Almakhan versus Aleksandre Topuria. Almakhan's coming off a win against Brad Katona, finished him by first round knockout, and before that lost to Umar Nurmagomedov in his UFC debut. He also dropped Umar, so that is always going to be in his highlight reel. Now Topuria is coming off a 4-win streak, winning 3 of them by first round knockout and his last one by decision against Colby Thickness in his UFC debut. They are both explosive punchers, but Almakhan is that of a nuke compared to Topuria, who's more like a stick of dynamite. Almakhan's power is quite rare to come across for a bantamweight. 10 of his 12 wins have ended by knockout. He has sent many fighters unconscious with a single strike, and Topuria's pressure style with that lead-heavy boxing stance is going to cause some pretty dangerous collisions. I think Topuria is technically the better boxer. He has a decent jab, but he especially works off his feints very well. Stutter steps to get the opponent to cover up, and then he rips shots to the body. He has a very precise right hand, but tends to start firing in close range, and you saw that against Thickness. Thickness was very elusive, throwing out kicks, while Topuria was patiently waiting for his opening. But he might not have that much time against Almakhan due to the power threat that's constantly presented in front of him. A single shot from Almakhan could end this fight, from the uppercut that he landed on Brad Katona, timing a potential takedown from Topuria, to throwing up those fast high kicks, potentially could even crush the guard and knock him out. He's so incredibly powerful that Topuria is not going to come across many fighters like this, even including those ranked. Like, Davison Figueiredo hits really hard, and that's pretty much it, that I think could rival Almakhan's power. Now, Almakhan is not just a one-dimensional fighter. He can wrestle. We've seen some of his clinch takedowns in the regional scene, but with how easily he got wrestled by Umar, I mean, he was on the ground for almost the entire fight. I think that is an avenue for Topuria to make a considerable difference here, because the striking is not guaranteed at all. Either of these guys can land a big shot on the other and knock the other out, but mixing in the takedowns is the path for Topuria's victory. He has a very good double leg, strong takedowns, and I think he could hold top position, landing ground and pound shots and going for submissions whenever the opening presents itself. So I'm going to go with Aleksandre Topuria mixing in his takedowns to win this fight by a unanimous decision. That is a fight that's going to keep you on the edge of your seat the entire time, dude. I cannot wait for it, man. But then we go to Abdulrakhman Yakhyaev versus Raffael Cerqueira. Breakdown is unnecessary. Abdulrakhman is destroying him in the first round. Easy win. Cerqueira is just not UFC caliber whatsoever. He wilts against pressure, lacks the striking defense, and I think Yakhyaev just applies pressure, knocks him down with punches against the fence, and then finishes him on the ground with ground and pound. So I'm going with Abdulrakhman Yakhyaev by a first round TKO. And then we go to some flyweight ranked fighters. Alex Perez versus Asu Almabayev. So Perez is coming off a loss to Tatsuro Taira. He got submitted at the end of the second round due to a knee injury that was inflicted by Taira when he had his back. He took him down. He hooked onto the leg awkwardly and caused the injury. Before that, he knocked out Matheus Nicolau in the second round. But before that, he was on a 3-fight loss streak to 3 prominent fighters. Muhammad Mokaev, Alexander Pantoja, and Davison Figueiredo all beat him before, which is insane that he fought all those guys, dude. He fought Joseph Benavidez, Jussier Formiga, some excellent fighters throughout his career, but Almabayev is coming off a win against Jose Ochoa, a unanimous decision, and also had a great performance there. Before that, though, he got by Manel Kep with the barrage of eye pokes that definitely impacted the fight. But Almabayev went into that fight with a very long win streak. Beat Matheus Nicolau as one of the notable wins in his career. Still the best one he has. Now, Perez's takedown defense is going to be tested throughout. In some fights, he's displayed stellar takedown defense, like against Muhammad Mokaev. But then not so much in others, like against Tatsuro Taira, but he wasn't held down for too long. And against Mokaev, he had a great ability to flow with him, avoiding many attempts to control the position. Almabayev will shoot many takedowns, like even in his last fight against Ochoa, he shot 16 times, landed 7 of them, and had over 9 minutes of control. He's a technical and very strong wrestler, especially when he commits to the body lock. It could be difficult for Perez to escape from there, but he's got to let his hands go, man. Almabayev has also some respectable striking skills. He has a decent high kick. He will lunge with the overhand sometimes, but the footwork can make it pretty tricky to land shots on him sometimes. He bounces a lot linearly, and as Perez tries to string up his combinations, he could leave himself open for the counter takedown, whiffing his shots. But ultimately, I think Almabayev is going to win the fight by just doing more. I think he's going to get some takedowns, land some shots in the stand-up, ground and pound shots, and ultimately just have enough dominance throughout the fight to win on the scorecards. But I am not counting out Perez being able to defend the takedowns, flow with them very well, land enough shots to win some of the rounds to sweep the scorecards as well. So this should be a very competitive fight, but I think Almabayev is just going to do enough offensively to win this. And then we go to Saygid Yakhyaev versus Nicholas Dalby. Bro, that's insane that they had Shinya Aoki fight this guy. Saygid, of course, bulldozed right through him. Right overhand dropped him, finished him on the ground. Easy win for him, obviously. But that was 3 years ago. Saygid has not fought in 3 years. He had a grappling match this year, but didn't fight anybody. And is currently on a 5-fight win streak, finishing 4 of those. And he lost to Carlston Harris. He got submitted in the second round, which is very interesting. Nicholas Dalby, though, is on a 2-loss streak. He got knocked out by Rennie Brown. That was the first knockout loss of his career. And before that, lost a very controversial split decision against Rinat Fakhretdinov. 4-fight win streak prior to that with a big win against Gabriel Bonfim, which is aging like wine. Finished him in the second round. Saygid should win this fight, and if he wasn't inactive, I think it would be more so one-sided, but perhaps due to the hiatus, it could actually swing the other way, if not be very close. We'll see though, it is speculation. Some fighters performed well after a long layoff, but 3 years might be too much. If he wasn't inactive, I think he should win this fight pretty handily, but a 3-year hiatus is pretty significant, and Nicholas Dalby is usually a very tough fighter, but that durable chin might have gotten cracked by Rennie Brown. I mean, the guy's 40, and Saygid is in his prime at 31. He's an excellent submission artist. He has good striking as well. Solid shot placement, good takedowns, has a very good rear naked choke. I just think Saygid is going to be too fast, too powerful, land some big shots, drop him, and then finish him on the ground with a rear naked choke in the second round. So I'm going with Saygid Yakhyaev by a second round submission. And then we go to Luke Riley versus Bogdan Grad. So Luke Riley is another teammate of Paddy Pimblett, but he has quite a distinct style from Paddy Pimblett as well as Shamrock. He's more of a striker who has no submission wins. 8 of his 11 wins are by knockout, and he has essentially a fundamental striking style. There's not anything that's like too crazy about his striking. He relies on the basics. He has a very good jab, cuts off the cage well, targets the body, just solid striking overall. And his takedown defense is all right. In his last one, he got taken down a few times and was just trying to stand up every time, fighting off the hands and wall walking. And he could run into an issue there because Grodd shoots a lot of takedowns. He has a very high average takedown rate. In his last 3 fights, he has secured 3 takedowns each. He lost his last fight to Muhammad Naimov, was on a 4-win streak prior to that, and lost his first Contender Series fight to Tom Nolan by a first-round knockout. And those are some solid takedowns against Naimov, dude. Off the body lock, took him down with the double leg against the fence. He was pretty hasty to get the back in the 3rd round, but I can see a lot of those takedowns working. I think some of those takedowns could work pretty well against Riley. He has some solid pressure, although his striking isn't nearly as polished as Riley's. Like, he'll throw some crazy wheel kicks and overhands and stuff, but he pressures well off the feints, and that lines up his takedowns pretty well, so I think he could be pretty effective there. His head is also so comically small. Riley just might miss shots that usually would land. So I'm going with the underdog here. I'm going with Bogdan P-Head Grodd to win this fight by a unanimous decision, dude. The smaller the head, the harder it is to hit. It's not a confident pick at all, but I think Grodd could wrestle his way to a win. And then we go to the main card, starting with Tagir Ulanbekov versus Kyoji Horiguchi. The size difference in this fight is so silly. Kyoji Horiguchi is minuscule compared to Ulanbekov, bro. They're gonna look like they're a weight class apart. I remember how startled DJ was when he met Tagir and they told him that they were in the same weight class. The guy couldn't believe it. So Horiguchi is on a 6-fight undefeated streak. One of those was a no contest due to an eye poke very early in the fight. He lost to Patchy Mix and Sergio Perez prior to that streak, which is pretty crazy. He lost to Patchy Mix, but Patchy was somewhat of a weight bully. And Tagir Ulanbekov is on a 4-fight win streak. Before that, losing to Tim Elliott, he is going to have such a massive size advantage. So he's much taller, much longer, and most likely weighs more. He's a strong grappler, has a solid chain wrestling ability, and will hold on to positions very well. I think he can overpower Horiguchi on the ground, and perhaps the reach advantage can make some things tricky for him in the stand-up too. But technically, I think Horiguchi is a much better striker. Man, it's going to be so cool to see Horiguchi in the octagon again with the Venom shorts. Yeah. No sponsors on the shorts. He has a unique fighting style where it's very karate-based. He's excellent with linear movement, darting in on opponents and exits very quickly as well. He's technical on the ground. He's not going to be completely helpless, but he might just be overpowered. Now, of course, that darting style, if timed correctly, can be countered pretty devastatingly. I mean, even his last opponent timed a left uppercut that rocked him badly in the 2nd round, and he did secure a takedown immediately afterward, but he's not going to have that same opening against Ulanbekov, right? If he commits for a takedown like that against Ulanbekov, he could get reversed or submitted. But Ulanbekov's technical striking should not be underestimated. I don't think he's as good as Horiguchi, but due to the height and reach advantage, I mean, he could be pretty tough to handle for Horiguchi. He has a solid front kick to keep the opponent at range, and he feints pretty decently with the lead hand to keep his opponent guessing. But, dude, I don't know if Kyoji Horiguchi can win this one, man. I would love to see him get a win, but the size difference, as well as the grappling advantage that Tagir has, is probably going to be too much for him. So I'm going to go with Tagir Ulanbekov to win this fight by a 3rd-round submission. And then we go to Waldo Cortes-Acosta versus Shamil Gaziev. Waldo took this fight on a few days' notice against the GOAT himself. We have yet to see such a specimen with movements full of elegance and artistic technique. A jab like lightning, a cross like thunder, fluid kicks while floating around the octagon like a butterfly. Never have we seen such perfection. It's not coincidence that John Jones or Tom Aspinall never uttered his name. They shy in the face of true greatness. And he's gonna get knocked out, isn't he? It's crazy that Waldo took this fight on a few days' notice. And Tom Aspinall is in shambles again, dude. Waldo gets eye poked the week after Tom did. He won the fight after he decided to continue. And now he's taking up another fight on short notice while Tom Aspinall is like preparing a video to hint at his next fight. Even though contextually I do agree and side with Tom Aspinall, but I can't lie and say that this is horrible optics for him, dude. And also, he might see him soon enough because I think he beat Shamil Gaziev. And by doing the UFC a favor, I think, he's potentially one fight away from a title shot. He's going to have to fight someone top ranked, and then if he wins that one, he should fight for the title. And this should be a pretty good fight for Waldo to win. He's by far the better boxer of the two. He's actually pretty solid for heavyweight standards. He has good cardio. He's very durable. Gaziev could get some takedowns, and he actually is surprisingly fast with that jab. He drops it to his hip a lot, could get countered there, but if the fight enters the third round, Waldo's winning this handily. Like, dude, the cardio that Gaziev displayed against Rozenstruik was beautiful. One of the funniest fights of all time. And the man was literally gassed out by laying on top of Dantel Mayes. Waldo's winning this fight, dude. I think he's just better. So Waldo Cortes-Acosta wins this fight by a third round TKO. And then we go to the welterweight debut of Jack Hermansson versus Mitsabek Orlbai. Hermansson just got knocked out brutally by Gregory Rodriguez, and prior to that beat Joe Pyfer, derailed the hype train momentarily, lost to Roman Dolidze, beat Chris Curtis, lost to Sean Strickland, beat Edmund Shabazian, lost to Marvin Vettori, beat Kelvin Gastelum, lost to Jared Cannonier, and then in a 4-fight win streak. So he has been exchanging wins and losses since he beat Jacques Souza in 2019. And according to numerology, that must mean he defeats Mitsabek Orlbai, who's coming off a first-round submission win against Tofik Musayev, lost to Matusz Rebecki by a split decision, and then had a lengthy win streak prior to that. So I cannot imagine Hermansson actually making the weight. The guy is huge. He's 6'1" with, a 77.5-inch reach. He wasn't small for middleweight, or at least he didn't seem to be. I always thought he was a pretty average middleweight, but Mitsabek Orlbai is gonna definitely test that drained chin. I mean, he already didn't have the best chin before. To drain himself further against a guy who has stones for hands, this is probably not the right move for Jack Hermansson, dude. He's going to have to adjust to become a reach merchant in the welterweight division because he cannot let these guys hit him on the chin. Orlbai is also a very strong wrestler, so the path of grinding out a win here, out wrestling Orlbai is also going to meet with resistance. I just don't think this is a great move for Hermansson. He has a pretty good jab and decent movement, but that is not enough for him to win the fight. Orlbai is going to be pressuring him. He could land an overhand from distance, dropping him to the ground and finishing him by ground and pound, or he shoots a takedown, rises into the clinch, lands some elbows, knocks him out from there. Regardless, I think Orlbai wins this fight by a first-round knockout. And then we go to Volkan Oezdemir versus Alonzo Menefield. So Volkan Oezdemir lost to Carlos Ulberg a full year ago. Before that, knocked out Johnny Walker, submitted Bogdan Gushkov during his debut, and prior lost to Nikita Krylov. Alonzo Menefield's on a 2-fight win streak. He beat Umar Sy, won a split decision against Julius Walker, and then prior to that got knocked out by Azamat Murzakanov and Carlos Ulberg. But bro, Menefield's loss to Ulberg was definitely one of the game plans of all time. He ran headfirst at that guy and got knocked out immediately, whereas Volkan Oezdemir was a lot more technical and fought to a decision. And honestly, I think he wins this fight. I think he's a much smarter fighter. He's a better striker. He might even be a better grappler. I mean, he took down Nikita Krylov. He submitted Bogdan Gushkov. He took down prime Paul Craig and lived to tell the tale. Proceeded to win the fight as well. The fight IQ difference is such a distinction here. I think Volkan's going to work off the jab pretty well, land some leg kicks, perhaps taking him down once or twice, and landing enough to ultimately win the fight by a decision. Now, Alonzo Menefield's power and explosiveness cannot be underestimated. The way he knocked out Misha Serkunov could be a way that he could land a shot and put Volkan Oezdemir down, but I think it's a higher probability that Volkan technically outstrikes him to a decision, pretty much just relying on the fundamentals. So Volkan Oezdemir by a decision. And then we go to the best fight of the card, the co-main event, the former welterweight champion Belal Muhammad versus Ian Machado Garry. This is a great technical fight. Both guys are quite well-rounded. Belal is on the surface a boxer wrestler. He can throw some body kicks and stuff, and he'll get the back and stuff like that, and he's not completely absent from submissions, but I think Ian Garry is ultimately more well-rounded, or he's more versatile in the striking. He can shoot takedowns, he'll go for submissions more regularly, and he also has the physical attribute advantage here too. He's taller, longer, faster, and punches harder. If the fight was 5 rounds, the cardio aspect could impact the outcome more, but they should both be solid for 3. Belal has 1 knockout win in his entire UFC career, and I don't know who it's to. It doesn't appear in my vision. I can't believe he finished Brady, dude. It never happened. It was a mass illusion, if you will. But man, he's pretty good with his volume striking. He puts together combinations pretty well. He has a pretty good one too, was decently effective with that against JDM. Now, I think Gary's going to be tougher to hit than JDM was, despite both of them being like 2 of the best technical strikers of the welterweight division. But again, Gary's got the reach. I think he's just generally better defensively. and he's more constantly elusive with his footwork, whereas many times JDM will stay in the pocket. Garry does not exist there as often, so he's going to be throwing a lot of jabs from distance and try to counter Belal's aggression, but the main thing that Garry's going to have to fight off are the takedowns because Belal is so incredibly strong with those. I mean, he slammed Leon on the top of his head off a high crotch takedown, and Garry's going to have to be ready for stuff like that. I think if he can avoid the takedowns, he wins his fight pretty handily, but that's a pretty big if, man, and the mixing of takedowns is also going to enhance his striking skills. Garry could be dropping his hands in anticipation of takedown shots and opens up punches for Belal to land. I would not underestimate Belal striking in this fight. Even though Ian Garry on paper is so much more just generally capable in the stand-up, the respect that Belal can get from his wrestling could equalize a lot of exchanges or even give him the advantage. Like the fight against JDM was highlighted with a lot of combinations that JDM was landing, but when you rewatch the whole fight, Belal landed a lot of good strikes as well, so his pressure boxing style is very effective, but I think because the fight is 3 rounds, and I think that Garry's going to be better prepared for the wrestling than some of Belal's other opponents, displaying his high fight IQ once again to win the fight by decision. I think he could control the fight off of his jab and line up counter shots, and if he gets Belal to start moving away, Garry's going to win this fight handily. Belal must move forward. He must be aggressive. He has to apply as much pressure as possible, and if he doesn't, the takedown's going to be way more difficult to set up. His striking isn't going to be nearly as effective, given all of that space for Garry to control. While he already is naturally the longer and faster fighter, it would just be formula for a defeat. Belal must go forward no matter what. His chances of victory rely on it, but I still don't think it's enough. I'm still going to go with Ian Garry to win the fight by a decision, using the jab to control it throughout, counter-strike very well, defending some of the takedowns. He's definitely going to hit the ground a few times, and I think Belal is going to win at least a round because of the mix of his striking and wrestling, but I think Garry's going to win 2 of them. So 29-28, Ian Garry. And then we finally go to the main event where the number 1 contender, Arman Tsarukyan, is going to try to redeem himself by not only completing the weight cut, but also defeating Dan Hooker so he can finally put himself in front of Ilia Topuria for the big fight that we're all waiting for. But Dan Hooker has shared some very interesting doubts about Arman's health going into this fight. His back might be hurt again, dude. What is he doing with these back workouts? The guy's contorting his spine at like 180 degrees. So this came from Dan Hooker, or more specifically one of his friends who went to get a massage at a hotel that Arman was staying in. And the lady who massaged him implied that Arman has a back injury. Arman told her to ease up on the back because it's in pain. Now either this lady was Gabby Garcia or Arman really is injured. We shall see. And Arman made the weight, so that's pretty good to see. Arman has a horrible style for Hooker to fight. The takedowns are going to be way too strong. The ground and pound is going to be like earth-shattering, dude. This guy pummels guys into the canvas who don't have the grappling skills of Islam, Oliveira, and Gamrot. Now, Hooker did defend many of Gamrot's takedowns. That was quite impressive. But he keeps his hands very low. He blocks punches with his chin. It even gives Arman a lot of openings in the stand-up, let alone the grappling that he has to worry about. His lack of defense, it makes even Arman's offensive striking very potent. The guy hits hard, he's quite explosive, and he could potentially land some big high kick and drop Hooker with that as well. So I got Arman Tsarukyan to win this fight by a 3rd round headbutt. Now 3rd round TKO via ground and pound. He lands some big shots in the stand-up, takes him to the ground, and I think eventually finishes him with ground and pound in the 3rd or 4th rounds. But Dan Hooker is not completely out of this fight. His path to victory is hoping that Arman gasses out, because so far Arman has never looked good at the end of a 3rd round. And if Dan Hooker survives until the 4th round, the fight can get very interesting, dude. Arman's slowing down, he's heaving. Hooker's landing shots to the body throughout the fight, even in the 1st round, getting some dividends out of it in the 4th. He starts landing big shots, timing knees as Arman shoots in for a slow, desperate takedown. And we can never underestimate Dan Hooker's ability to take a punch. Or a head kick, too. Jalen Turner slapped this guy in the face with his foot. Flush shot, and he ate that thing like it was nothing, dude. So if Dan Hooker can tough his way to the 4th round, I can see how he wins this. Those intercepting shots like the uppercuts and the knees in the 4th could score him a knockdown if Arman's takedown shots slow down. Because we have to also remember that Arman was slowing down toward the end of the Oliveira fight. So I would not count out Dan Hooker, especially if he survives into the 4th round and Arman starts slowing down. We also have to remember that Arman has not fought since UFC 300. That is very important. He had a full training camp to fight Islam, but he didn't actually fight, so there could potentially be some ring rust. The 4th and 5th could be pretty tough, and he might not have the cardio to go a strong 5 rounds against Dan Hooker, so I still think he wins, but I do want to regard Dan Hooker's chances here because he does have a slight reasonable chance of winning here. But I think Arman's going to win the fight by a 3rd round TKO. And Arman is an enormous favorite. And if you guys want to capitalize on these fights, you could sports bet on DraftKings. Thankfully sponsoring this video, covering all the UFC fights and providing the absolute best betting lines. From all the UFC pay-per-view cards to the fight nights to even Dana White's Contender Series, DraftKings has it all. With plenty of research, you could capitalize on those odds using that MMA knowledge. And they have the stacked UFC Qatar Fight Night card with a title eliminator fight headlining it in Arman Tsarukyan versus Dan Hooker. Quite a difference in the odds there though. Another fight with title implications, but perhaps with one more win in the fight of Belal Muhammad versus Garry, where the former champion is actually quite a sizable underdog. Volkan Oezdemir is also a pretty sizable favorite against Alonzo Menafield. Jack Hermansson's descent into the welterweight division is met with him also being a pretty sizable underdog against Mitabek Earlby. That's going to be quite an interesting fight. Sergey Spivak versus Shamil Gaziev is pretty good, close on the odds as well. Also, Almabayev is given the opportunity to rise in the rankings against Alex Perez, and he's a pretty moderate favorite. Luke Riley, a big favorite against Bogdan Grad. And then the exciting debut of the undefeated knockout artist, Abdulrakhman Yakhyaev, is a -1,000 favorite. That is quite large against Raffael Cerqueira. And then the much anticipated return of Kyoji Horiguchi, who's arriving from great prominence in Ryzen. He's taking on Tagir Ulanbekov, and he's actually an underdog, which is quite interesting. One of the best fights on the card, Bekzat Almakhan versus Aleksandre Topuria, nearly a pick'em as well. Fights don't get that much better than this one. Ismail Naurdiev is a slight favorite against Ryan Loder. Nurullo Aliev is a large favorite against Shem. And Nicholas Dalby is a big underdog against Saygid Yakhyaev. So there's some interesting odds in this one. You could bet with a straight bet, wait for the props, just endless strategies, and it's all awaiting you on DraftKings. So for anybody who's interested in sports betting, DraftKings is absolutely the place to go. Go to DraftKings.com and use the promo code THEWEASEL when you sign up, as they're giving you a generous offer for all new customers, turning your $5 into $200 if your bet wins. Paid instantly in bonus bets. The crown is yours, and the offer requires a minimum of -500 on the odds. Remember, go to DraftKings.com and use the promo code THEWEASEL. Remember to bet responsibly. So those are my picks for the Qatar Fight Night card, and hopefully Arman Tsarukyan does not fight anybody else in the arena besides Dan Hooker on Fight Night. In the octagon. Okay, in the octagon. This guy is completely unhinged, dude. He literally headbutt Dan Hooker in the weigh-ins. That's crazy. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.